Hi YouTube, Darth here. This is Battle Plan, a video series where I talk about all the big picture strategies you can use to help you achieve victory on battlefield maps. Today I'm going to be talking all about Conquest Pearl Market, a map in the Dragon's Teeth DLC. It's a map everybody loves, or hates, or loves to hate. Whatever you might think about it, I'm going to give you some tips today that will help you win the games you play on Pearl Market. To call Pearl Market chaotic would be an understatement, and it's pretty plain to see with how the map is laid out. Like a lot of the Conquest large maps, there are 5 capture points: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo. Conquest Small is similar, but with only 3 points. Both of these maps are infantry focused as there are only a few vehicles. The large version has an Amtrak on the US and Chinese team, while the small version has but a single dirt bike. That's all there is for vehicles, so it should come as no surprise that this map is almost entirely infantry focused. With all the verticality in this map, how easy it is to get from one point to the next, and the fact that you can be shot from pretty much anywhere at any time, players can get easily frustrated and overwhelmed on Pearl Market. But let's focus up and dissect this map one piece at a time. Let's start at Echo. It's easily the most important point on this map, and it should be the first point you're checking off on your strategic to-do list. It's the heart of the map, and it pretty well controls who is going to win because of its location. Even if you control no other point on the map, your team can use Echo to come back and win simply because it provides access to every other flag on the map. Echo is not just only good as a spawn point, as it gives your team sight on the middle lanes of the map, it acts as a draw to enemies, and it unlocks the commander's cruise missile ability. It's the gateway to victory, and it's exceptionally hard to win Pearl Market without control of Echo. But you obviously can't win with just Echo, so let's look at the overall strategic picture of Pearl Market. Specifically, let's look at the 4 outer points and what they offer to the respective teams. Both the Chinese and US teams have slightly different starting pictures. The US has the most obvious gimme point at Delta and pretty much has to take this point at the start of the map. During the game, it's a pretty easy point to take as you don't really have to deal with any of the vertical threats present on the other points in the map. There's just one building and only one level to it, and the capture zone of Delta is only inside that building. If you're the Chinese team, it is a good idea to close the barrier gate as it limits the number of entry points for the US team to simply walk in from their spawn. They have to make their own noisy door if they want inside. Starting on the Chinese team, there are 2 relatively nearby points at the start: Charlie and Bravo. Taking either of these points is a nice stepping stone to taking Echo. Charlie has great roof access that can really put the brakes on the Chinese team if the US gets their hands on it. Additionally, it's this roof access that can make it difficult to extract a squad that has beacons or is otherwise holed up inside of the buildings here. So as the Chinese team, you can't let the US have this point. Bravo is a bit more protected of a point for the Chinese team. For the US to have access to the point, they would have usually had to have taken Echo. The run from Alpha is pretty brutal, and there are lots of ways that an enemy is going to get shot down on the way. Bravo, like Charlie, has a vertical threat in the westernmost building as it looks down on most of the point. Be sure to clear this building when you're taking the point on either team. Now that we've got the starting situation on our battle map, let's fill in one more point at Alpha. Alpha is a bit of a stretch for both teams, but it is more easily accessible to the US team as their run is less susceptible to interception. The Chinese team, on the other hand, has all kinds of potential combat encounters along the way to Alpha. That being said, Alpha is one of the most difficult points on the map to take as there are multiple buildings around the point that offer cover to defenders or squads of spawning enemies. The building in the middle of Alpha is one of the most common capture locations. Defenders should expect attackers to be in here, and attackers would do well to consider other capture spots. Additionally, the spawn points scattered all around the point make it exceptionally difficult to anticipate where defenders are going to come from. As such, it usually stays in the hands of the US team or any team willing to defend it. So now that we have a picture of what each of these points brings to the battle, let's look at this typical situation. One team has 2 points on either side of the map and now also controls Echo. For the most part, the map is going to swing based on Echo. That's why when I'm playing the objectives on Pearl Market, I like to hit points in this order. I'll attack or defend Echo, pick an enemy point, capture it, return to Echo, and pick again. It's pretty much a strategic game of whack-a-mole as points don't tend to stay captured for very long. As the US team, you have to prioritize capturing Delta as a strong Chinese presence there can really prevent access to the rest of the map. Obviously, as a Chinese team, it's a nice prize to grab if the US team doesn't have good map control. If it's the only thing your team has, it's pretty much not going to do you any good, but it will definitely draw a lot of attention. Again, as the US team, if you have a situation where the Chinese are in control of most of the rest of the map, Charlie makes a pretty good starting point for getting into Echo. The 2 buildings with multiple floors make pretty good strongholds even if the Chinese team pushes back. From there, you've got quick access to Echo or even a decent run at Bravo. As the Chinese team, you'll want to make sure that the US team stays out of Charlie and Bravo. Once you have Echo, it's pretty easy to strike at Alpha or even Delta by running along the rooftops that lead from Echo. The strategic situation simplifies a bit on Conquest Small. There are only 3 points to worry about, and 2 of them look pretty familiar. The difference is that the Alpha point near the US spawn is now very vulnerable while it's being captured. There are a lot of ways that defenders can use the nearby buildings to prevent a capture or mow down any soldiers in the area. So I've just given you the strategic assessment of this map, but on Pearl Market that's really only half the picture since this map is so chaotic. You've really got to be on your A game to succeed in Pearl Market, and I've got some common situations you're going to see that I'd like to point out. First, I'm going back to the map to show you a few things. Let's look at the most dangerous areas of this map. The most obvious one is at Echo. If you're on the exposed rooftop, chances are you're already dead. 2 of the most common spawn points at Echo will put defenders on a rooftop that has a great line of sight on pretty much every inch of the rooftop. If you're taking Echo, this is the area you're going to have to worry about the most after cleaning up any enemies on the point. Stick to the stairwells and you've got a better chance to survive. Just watch out for enemies coming up behind you. If you can, try to backrage the most common spawn point for enemies. If you catch them unaware, you can usually bag an entire squad or more hanging out on top of this roof. Next, the streets are narrow passages filled with lots and lots of death. These lanes that I've highlighted have very long lines of sight with sporadic cover. The closer you get to E, the more likely enemies are going to be in these areas, and some of them are simply waiting for you to make a mistake. You absolutely have to make sure that these lanes are clear before running down them, or you are going to die frequently in them. Here's a bit of wisdom that your elders hopefully taught you. Be sure to look both ways before crossing the street. The next tip is about verticality. Verticality is a tactical advantage to be exploited over players who can't grasp beyond the 2D plane of existence, and height is king on Pearl Market. You're going to be killed very often from enemies in seemingly random positions above you. Rather than get frustrated about this, if you can take to the rooftops and keep to cover while utilizing them, you're going to have a lot fewer random deaths from above. Additionally, you're going to have a lot of surprise advantages over enemies who aren't even looking at the roofline. So make yourself king of the mountain, but if you're at the bottom, keep a keen eye on the ledges above when you're dashing from cover to cover. Finally, you need to make yourself very familiar with this building structure. It's repurposed everywhere on this map. If you can master it and its subtle variations, you've already gone a long way to learning the secrets of tactical success on Pearl Market. For the most part, there's only one way up in this structure, so it's also pretty easy to defend from assaults you know are coming up from the ground. Just be sure to watch your back or put it in a wall. Let's look at some loadouts that I've found to be particularly useful on Pearl Market. I'm going to open with my big guns, and that's playing as aggressive recon. There's so much going on in Pearl Market, and it's really hard to get a grasp on every possible avenue of attack your enemy could be utilizing. So as aggressive recon, I run with the tugs to lock down a point. You can stick the tugs almost anywhere out of the way on this map, and it will still get great coverage of a relatively large combat area. If I combine this with a CQB weapon like the ACWR, MTAR, or a shotgun, I've got serious firepower to match my foreknowledge of enemy positions. Just remember to pick up your tugs if you move on to a new point. But that's not all. Let me show you my secret sauce on Pearl Market. And that's this room right here below Echo. You can get here by jumping on the ledge from the nearby stairwell. Put a tugs in here and you can see just about everybody on the point at Echo. But wait, there's more! Add the spawn beacon to the mix and you can immediately drop in a squad and take back the point from a direction of your choosing. Not a lot of people know about this room, and fewer still come looking in here for recon equipment. Optionally, you could also run with claymores as recon, as they present great opportunities to protect your back, especially when you're trying to take Echo from the stairs and nobody else has your back. Trust me, Mr. Claymore always has your back. If you want to switch it up and play as support, the Claymore is also an obvious choice for that class. Another great gadget choice for support or recon is C4. You can use it either offensively or defensively, but keep in mind that one bad toss around a corner could spell your doom, as it's pretty tight in a lot of these corridors. As for weapons, I'd recommend running with a CQB carbine, shotgun, or possibly the MG4 or M240B in a run and gun setup. Since you've got the capability of getting extra claymores as support, I'd recommend running the perimeter defense field upgrade. If you're looking to play assault on this map, there's nothing too surprising about what I'm going to say. You should be using a medic bag, defibrillator, and a CQB weapon. The M320 grenade launcher has some use on this map, but you're going to do a lot more good for your team and yourself here with reses and heals. The sheer number of areas you can be hit from, frequent enemy contact, and easy to reach cover makes the medic bag a definite plus for recovering from encounters. Now, if you want to play an engineer, I think you're going to have a pretty bad time. Vehicles really aren't the focus of this map, and they don't really get out of control either. You could try running with some mines to catch the occasional dirt bike, or if you're lucky you might get the Amtrak. But really, I think you're wasting a ticket if you're spawning as an engineer. As for the Amtrak, this vehicle serves the interesting purpose of being an armored spawn point for your team. It's extremely difficult to get in and maneuver the vehicle successfully in the center of the map, and there will be plenty of players using C4, so if you're looking to preserve the armor on this map, stay away from the city. The long lanes on the outside are about the best routes to run, as you can avoid the C4 problem, and the Chinese Amtrak can cause lots of problems for the US team at Delta. It's a decent vehicle to hit the deep points of the map with. Finally, whatever weapon you use, whatever class you use, I highly recommend running with a suppressor on your weapons. On Pearl Market, there are almost always enemies nearby, and you make yourself an easy target by showing up on the minimap. The range for engagements on Pearl Market is generally very short to mid-range. The worst attraction for silenced weapons, the decreased bullet velocity, really doesn't hamper you too much at these ranges. Keep in mind that the enemy can still hear you, but you get survivability in return. So use what works for you, but know that Pearl Market is a raging chaotic inferno, but if you can master the strategy, tactics, and find a loadout that works for you, that's the game. Or at least, that's the plan. That's it for this episode of Battle Plan. If you liked this episode, please leave a like before you go. If you're new around here, check out my channel and please consider subscribing. If you've got a map and a game mode you'd like to see me discuss in a future episode, please leave a comment below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, YouTube.